great unknown, where feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. The sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you never failed, and you won't stop now. And I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. Oh, you are mine. Yeah. I am yours, and you are mine. You are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I did not prepare an Easter speech to welcome you this evening, but I want you to feel welcome. I hope that from the moment that you walked in the door, you felt welcome. And I also hope that when you leave, you will feel welcome to share the information that you will receive tonight. I want to bring up Dr. Kathy Randall, Reverend Paul Pradditt. He will give us our opening prayer.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to Christ Church. Again, my name is Paul Pradditt, and I'm the rector here. And on behalf of Christ Church, we are glad that you are here for this very special event. One thing I want to say on a personal note, this is really important to me that we are hosting this here. Next Monday will be, and I'm going to violate my own anonymity here, next Monday will be my 20th sobriety birthday. And I would not be standing here if it was not for people, my family, mental health resources that were around me that helped me get to this place. And I hope I will never forget all of that. So again, it's an honor for me that you're here on this night to talk about this very important subject. So I'm going to start with a prayer. So let us pray. Loving God, we gather this night as a people of all creeds, faiths, and backgrounds, but as a single community seeking your presence and guidance. We come as family members, friends, co-workers, and mental health professionals. We come this night because we believe that you love each of us just as we are, and you walk with us on our individual journeys through life. Give us courage to face our challenges and open us to the many ways you are working in our midst. Help us to identify mental illness for the disease that it is, that we might have the courage and the wisdom in the face of ignorance and stigma. Inspire us as we seek to overcome fear, acquire knowledge, and advocate for compassion and enlightened treatment and services for all. Bless all doctors, therapists, researchers, social workers, and all in helping professions as they seek to overcome ignorance and injustice with care and compassion. Help us to see ourselves and those who struggle with mental illness as you see us, persons of value and worth, persons of creativity and potential. And may we come to understand the interconnectedness of body, mind, and spirit in bringing about health and wholeness. And may we take what we hear this night and go forward with a renewed sense of vision, hope, and possibility for the future. All of this we ask in the name of the one who always sought and served those that the world had pushed to the margins, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. They say that Tua Tagovailoa chose 13 as his jersey number because he felt called to be a 13th disciple. Well, Dr. John Dorsey should wear 13 as well. Like the disciples on the seashore, Dr. Dorsey said yes to a call to provide mental health care to underserved patients. And this area has never been the same. Like those fishermen, he left it all, his psychiatric practice in California, and moved to Greensboro, Alabama, when that beautiful city was on its way to becoming a ghost town. Now, it's hard to find a parking place there. In less than 20 years, he has provided psychiatric care to hundreds of citizens, not only in Greensboro, but also in Marion, who otherwise would have none. He has given nearly 200 pre-med, pre-nursing, pre-healthcare students from Harvard to Berkeley a gap year to learn about rural health care. He has secured funding for housing for his psychiatric patients, as well as treatment offices, after-school child, daytime adult care, and has inspired a revitalization of that lovely town. Let us all welcome as our keynote speaker, a number 13, a world changer, Dr. John Dorsey. Dr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Kathy. I mean, really incredible. But I guess thank you all for coming and letting me share a little bit about some of the good things that are going on in mental health in the Black Belt. But being here tonight, every time I get to come up to Tuscaloosa, it just reminds me of how lucky I've been over the last 20 years, the good people that I've gotten to meet, and people who have really had extended a spirit of welcome. It's hard to imagine sort of people saying, hey, this guy from California, we're going to welcome him into our community. It makes me kind of think about, so when I fly back and forth between California and Alabama, I'll get on the flight from California, it goes to Houston, and then the Houston flight goes to Birmingham. So on the flight from California to Houston, nobody looks each other in the eye. Everybody's elbowing each other out of the way, and just shoving their stuff over the sort of overhead and fighting for space. And then I'm like, this is weird. And then you get on the flight from Houston to Birmingham. Everybody's asking who you are, who you're related to, and I'm like, this is more my style. But just a wonderful contrast. So I get to go back and forth and see that. But I really feel that whenever I'm up in Tuscaloosa, and also really getting to learn about some of the really good things that are going on in mental health in this community, and people are really fighting hard for that cause. I was lucky to get to meet Betty Shirley, was one of the first people I got to meet when I got here. And I mean, true champion and a true advocate. And I think people like her and her spirit are just wonderful, I think, examples of what is going on up here in Tuscaloosa. But anyway, you guys might be asking, I was seeing a patient this morning, and one of my favorite patients, she goes, now, John, tell me how you ended up here in Greensboro from Los Angeles. It doesn't make any sense. And she was exactly right. I still can't make any sense out of it. Kamisha and I were just talking. Life is funny. You don't have these plans. You kind of take these steps, and then things kind of unfold. So I had finished my residency at UC Davis up in Northern California and moved back down to Southern California where my folks live and where I grew up. And had this just general sense that I wasn't in the right place and couldn't really put it into any words. And for whatever reason, the South came to my mind. I don't know. I'd never spent any time in the South, never been to Alabama. And I started kicking around this idea, and I ended up at a conference down in San Diego. And I ran into another psychiatrist, and we hit it off, became good friends. And he was from Jackson, Alabama. And he's like, John, if you want to move to a small town, Alabama invented small towns. This is where you need to be. And so it kind of gave me the confidence to say, all right, I'm going to give this a try. So I set up interviews. I got a job, and I actually had somewhat of a sensible plan. Again, plans, but don't always work out. I had a plan to have a part-time job at Bryce Hospital, and I could get my feet grounded and kind of get to know the sort of state, maybe figure out a small town where I belong. So packed up my belongings, said to my family, I'm going to Alabama. They go, you don't know anybody in Alabama. And I started driving cross country. I get to Oklahoma, and I get a call from the administrator at Bryce who said, we no longer need your services. And I'm like, huh. They said, we found somebody who's willing to work full time. And so I'm like, all right, I'm in Oklahoma. I can't go back after a month with my tail between my legs and admit that this is a total failure. So I went down to my brother's house in Houston to kind of gather myself and figure out what to do. Again, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a job. I don't have a reason to be anywhere. And he goes, well, you need to stay here for a while. And I go, why? He goes, well, there's a hurricane coming through. And I go, hurricane schmurricane, how big can it be? Turns out it's Hurricane Katrina was in my path. So I look on CNN, and right in my path is this giant hurricane destroying the Southeast. And I'm like, man, these are two bad signs. This is not going well so far. I got a phone call from the short-term stay motel where I had reservations, and they said, if you don't get here in 24 hours, we're going to give you a room away. We're getting all these people coming up from New Orleans who need a place to stay. So I said, all right, what the heck? I'll pack up my car, and I'm going to make a go of it and make an adventure. And I get there, and the short-term stay motel increased the rate to $185 a night. So I'm spending through all my savings, and I'm like, I don't have a job. I don't know why I'm here. And so finally, I just said, all right, first thing I got to do is I got to find a place to live. And so I stumbled upon Moundville, where they have a mobile home sales office, and went into the sales office. And these two guys look at this guy from California, a California license plate, and I said, can I rent a trailer from you? And the immediate thing you could see in their mind was, this guy's going to start a meth lab. And I was like sitting there sweating, and they're grilling me and saying, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh no, don't worry, I'm a psychiatrist." And they go, "That makes even less sense." So after about an hour of grilling me, they finally go, "All right, we don't want him in Moundville. Let's send him down to Greensboro." And they sent me down. They introduced me to, gave me the number for a pastor and a woman who ran a nonprofit organization down there. Honestly, one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me. And I don't know, how many of you guys have been down to Greensboro before? I mean, it's just a beautiful town, quintessential southern town, great Main Street. I was really drawn to the sort of complexity of it. Ben and I were talking about how in Southern California, it's sort of one-dimensional. You really feel like everything's moving in the same direction, but there's complexity, there's texture, there's richness, the history, the culture is really, really, and especially from seeing it through a Californian's eyes, was something I was really drawn to at the time. And I think a lot like Tuscaloosa down there, they're really good people who are working really hard to try to develop good things. I mean, they don't have the resources and other things, but there are people who are really, really working hard to try to make things better down there. And so I was lucky to join with a group of people, and we've really, over the last 20 years, developed, I think, what are pretty good mental health services. We've been able to develop a geriatric and adult inpatient unit down in Demopolis. They were able to do some jail and sort of prison psychiatric services. Have developed nursing home psychiatric services. And I'm really proud over the last several years, we've really developed the mental health services in Hale County. I joke we're probably the one spot anywhere from the coast that actually has a child psychiatrist at Hale County Hospital. And imagine having that in Greensboro, Alabama. It's hard to get a child psychiatrist anywhere. We've got therapists, we've got PAs and nurse practitioners who are working with us. We're training the primary care, the family medicine doctors to be able to provide more psychiatric care. So it's something that I think still at the early stages, but something that we're working really hard on, and I think the community is really responding positively to it. But one of the things, and I think in talking with so many people over the last 10 years, and I think just even at our table, and you guys probably all noticed, something seems to be changing over the last 10 years, feeling a very big shift. And it's not just psychiatry, it's how we're treating each other and how we're seeing one another. And it's like everybody's kind of feeling it, but it's like, how do you sort of frame that, and what do you sort of make of what's going on? And it's my sense that we may actually be at the early stages of something about on the scale of the Industrial Revolution. If you look back at the Industrial Revolution, it's a really disorienting time. Sort of the institutions, sort of healthcare, education, higher ed, all these institutions that were sort of working well in an agrarian economy started to lose their footing a little bit as the ground shifted beneath them. And we may be shifting in that way towards sort of a digital technical sort of society. And my sense is that at that time, if you look back in history, while the institutions were sort of trying to find their footing and adapting, all these other institutions started to begin to pop up. And it may be that time for sort of what we need is actually time to build and kind of rethink what it is that we're doing. And bringing it back to mental health, one of the things that I think everybody in here is seeing is the sort of mental health crisis among children. And I think without that institutional structure and that stability, children don't do well. And I think they're acting out in all kinds of ways, behaving in all kinds of ways. And I think that that's one thing, if you look at the kids who are between 0 and 20 now, in the next 20 years are going to be the 20 to 40-year-olds, and then they're going to be the 40 to 60-year-olds. And I think we need to really start to think very, very differently about the types of community institutions, whether it's religious organizations, whether it's educational organizations, police force. At all levels, we have to really say we're responding to something very different now. And I think that's kind of where we're at. My sense is it's not an easy challenge, but I don't think people in the Industrial Revolution were thinking about it. That's where the settlement house movement started, YMCAs, other things started to pop up in response to the sort of social turmoil. And I really do think it's a generational challenge. One of the things that we've really focused on at Horseshoe Farm is we're trying to respond to the needs of the communities, but we're also really focusing on preparing the next generation, because I think it's their responsibility to take on this challenge and really start to see what the future looks like. And so when Kathy called me and said, hey, this is what we're talking about, I thought it was a really wonderful opportunity. Ben Matrican, who was one of our fellows 5 years ago, was actually coincidentally down he's now a fourth-year medical student, doing his psychiatry rotation with me, coming back to what we were joking, the mecca of psychiatry, come from California to come to get your mental health training in Greensboro, Alabama. But I think it's people like him who are going to really have to sort of take on this challenge and really shape what the world is going to become. And he is actually going into psychiatry, so I think it'd be nice maybe to hear a few words from him and just talk a little bit about his experience. But come on up, Ed.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. This is such a wonderful experience, and for kind of welcoming me into this this gathering. I'm hoping just to share a little bit, I guess, about my perspective now, having lived in Greensboro a few years ago and on the cusp of starting a psychiatry residency, what kind of I see as the value or the message that I took away from being here, because I think there's a really big message and really something special that's happening here that makes me optimistic for the future of mental health. It's interesting that Hale County has come to represent this kind of outsized part of my story and my journey to psychiatry, so I'm going to share a little bit about that. But, if Dr. Dorsey is one thing, he's definitely humble, and so I hope this also speaks to the extent of how much he has kind of influenced my experience and my decision to go into psychiatry. So a little bit about me. I'm from New York City originally. I grew up in Manhattan. So I, really in the thick of it. I grew up kind of in a strong, close-knit Jewish community on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I spent the first 22 years or so of my life on the East Coast. I went to school in Massachusetts. And I was kind of sitting there thinking, like, well, what am I going to do after college? I know I'm kind of interested in medicine. I know that mental health is interesting to me. But what am I going to do next? And so the natural progression, of course, was to go to Greensboro, Alabama, to go to Hale County. No, I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Dorsey at my college. He came and did an information session, and I think things at that moment really clicked for me. I knew that I was interested in community health. I knew that I was interested in mental health, and I didn't necessarily I didn't know I would be moving to Alabama, but it just kind of all came together for me in that moment. I told my parents I was moving to Alabama, and they said, "You're going where?" Sorry, what? But it was a really special experience, and I think I guess by way of explaining a little bit more of what's going on down there, I was a fellow for a year at Project Horseshoe Farm, which is the organization that Dr. Dorsey started. And what it means to be a fellow is there's students who are coming from across the country who are spending a year kind of working and learning in this really close, tight-knit community how to provide relationship-focused care. And I guess specifically what that means is we ran community center programs for adults, we ran after-school programs for children and adolescents, we had a housing program for women with mental illness that we spent a lot of time kind of getting to know the folks they're at. There were several other things as well, but really what we were doing was learning how to kind of get to know people, build relationships, and care for them in that way. And there's we got to know a lot of people, but there's one patient who really sticks with me and that I remember very clearly to this day. Her name, I'll call her Miss P. But she was a woman who lived in one of our housing programs, and she was someone I became quite close to over the course of the year. She was she was quite guarded in a lot of ways. She was very careful with who she became close to, and I think, it was quite challenging to develop a relationship with her, and we certainly had our struggles when, she would get upset with me because I told her that, she shouldn't be drinking that much orange juice or things like that. But it was kind of through time and through different, through those challenges that we developed this kind of interesting relationship. She was in her late 60s. She had grown up in Louisiana. She lived in Alabama, and I was this 22-year-old from New York who had just moved to Alabama, but we just connected. And she had a lot of complicated medical and psychiatric issues, but it kind of became clear over the course of the year that it was through getting to know her, through the kind of struggle and the trials and the tribulations of developing a relationship with her, that I think I was able to help her. And that was a big realization for me. That was something I think I really learned. It was, it's caring about someone and showing empathy isn't just about the kind of, act of saying, are you okay? What's going on? Tell me a little bit about learning all of these things that are happening in their story, learning about the kind of landscape of their life and trying to understand what makes them tick, what gives them meaning. And, it's interesting now that I've been in medical school for 4 years, where the emphasis is really on, how does this medication work? When do we give this medication? What is the effect that it has on the body? How much do we give? When should patients take it? It's a very different way of relating to people. And, I think, thankfully, we know a lot. We have a lot of knowledge. We have a lot of, and it's an exciting time to be a part of psychiatry because there's so much new information coming out. But the piece that is kind of missing that stuck with me is this piece that I learned in Greensboro in Alabama, which is, what does it mean to show someone empathy? What does it mean to care for someone, to get to know them in the context of their own life? And that's not something that's easy to teach. That's not something that I learned in medical school, but it's something that is happening here, and I think in a really natural and organic way. And now that I'm kind of on the cusp of my, the next stage of training where, I'm going to learn where I'm going in about a week, but psychiatry, I think it's what I learned in Hale County in Greensboro about what it means to connect with people, what it means to care for them in the whole context of their communities that is kind of driving me forward. So I think that speaks not just to, what Horseshoe Farm is doing, but what Dr. Dorsey is doing as well. And, why this little corner of the world has had such an outsized kind of influence and effect on my life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey and Ben. Very good information, and I wish we could pluck some other people out of California, New York, to bring them here to Tuscaloosa. I would like to now introduce Deputy Chief Sanders. Let's see, he's a 27-year veteran of the City of Tuscaloosa Police Department. He was born in Demopolis and raised in Marion. He is married with 3 children and 1 grandchild. During his career, he's demonstrated a strong commitment to community-driven, problem-oriented, intelligence-led policing. He served as the first-line supervisor for the traffic division. During the Christmas season, he is known for the Santa on the Police motorcycle, delivering toys to children all over the city. And this is very, very key in noting for the men that are present. He is in the planning process of forming the Strong Men, also known as the Strong Foundation. This group will be composed of men in the community that will provide a vast array of positive mentoring programs for various ages and populations. If you're interested, see him before he leaves. Now I'm going to introduce Lieutenant Craig Parker, my friend. Lieutenant Parker is a 13-year veteran of the Tuscaloosa Police Department. Early in his career, Lieutenant Parker realized a need in law enforcement to address the continuing mental health crisis and laid the groundwork for what is now the TPD Behavioral Intervention Team. Since December 2022, he has founded and commands the BIT, which encompasses crisis intervention, team officers, mental health officers, school resource officers, and the first multi-agency, multidisciplinary threat assessment and management team in the state of Alabama, Central Alabama Threat Team. That is awesome. He enjoys spending time with his family, Savannah, Fallon, his daughter, Bo, his son, and Lainey, his daughter. And they will come in that order, and then you will hear from me again.
Good afternoon. Y'all see, after Christmas, I work out, so I lose all the weight, before I get back into the Santa suit during Christmas. I know Miss Catherine been trying to give me some brownies, and I told her I just had to wait till Christmas time, because that's when I dress up and go out and give out gifts. Like Dr. Dorsey, he come to Greensboro in the Black Belt, and I'm from Marion, and I come here to Tuscaloosa, so we have something similar. Being law enforcement for 27 years, I have experienced a lot when it comes to mental health. The seriousness of it, the danger that it exposed as far as with law enforcement, officers getting hurt. I was one of them. And also victims. I have also seen victims take their lives due to mental health. Have family members that also experience mental health. Over the years growing up, when you look out and you see how things should be handled when it comes to a mental person in law enforcement, it's different now. I can remember when I was young, I had a neighbor who had mental illness, and the police would come out, had to fight this person, throw him in the back of the car, and take him to jail. There was no help. A few days later, they let him back out, and the cycle continues. It wasn't anything that was addressed. So nowadays, I give credit to Lieutenant Parker, who makes the police department look good because of his outstanding research in mental illness when it comes to law enforcement. 25 years ago, I was on a routine call, and we was out in an area here in Tuscaloosa where this guy was mentally ill, showed all the signs of mentally ill. We were getting calls going back and forth with this guy. But this one time, he actually had a very mental episode where I had a partner that chased him in the house, and it became dangerous. When I got to him, were able to save the officer from several individuals that had mental illness. Due to that, I got hurt, and right now I do have permanent pins in my wrist due to that. But we had that program going, what Lieutenant Parker had. Back then, we could have probably saved myself from getting hurt, the other officer from getting hurt, and probably that person from getting hurt. How many of y'all that be on Facebook faithfully? I know everybody. Go ahead, everybody raise your hand. Anybody like my wife, she's on Facebook faithfully. But how many times when you're on Facebook or social media, you look on there and you see some people that's just talking out of their mind, talking, and you're trying to make sense of what's going on. These are some signs of people who are in mental illness. How many times that you see where the police officer go out to certain calls and they have to interact with these people? It go on here in Tuscaloosa. I can remember a few years ago when I first started, just a few blocks over, we had a apartment complex, which is not there anymore, but there's a lot of people who was mental that was there, that law enforcement constantly had to go out and interact with these people on a daily basis, really on an hourly basis. And sometimes we can just go out and we might have to take somebody to jail, put them in jail. It's a cycle again. And let them back out, and here we go again next week. Then sometime as a law enforcement officer, we get creative. I can remember going to a house and lady said, hey, I got this demon, I got this booger bear chasing me. And we'll get a stick and we'll draw around the bed and say, hey, as long as you stay in this circle, it can't do anything to you. It works. But we weren't getting the proper help that we were needing for these people. So it's a lot that when it comes to law enforcement that we encounter. And, if you look out over the years and you look at the officer who had got fatally killed, majority of the time it's because of a mentally ill person. And that's why we need the support. We have a great behavior unit, which is command and created by Lieutenant Parker. I talk about him a lot, y'all, because I had to call on him. But also just in the schools. We got to look at the schools. You know, we got teachers that are trying to teach. We got kids who have mental issues. Lieutenant Parker is doing a great job working with the school system. But as far as when law enforcement, we do have our school resource officer who's getting hurt during the process. Teachers who are getting hurt. And we need the support. We need the help. We need training. And I tell anybody, I tell Congress, governor, senators, we need more money in mental health. Because if we provide mental health to the people who need it, this community will be great. You know, I always go back to saying, hey, I want Tuscaloosa in my hometown of Marion, Alabama, be like Mayberry. And I always tell them, I say, you know, I guess I'm Andy Griffin. You know, I'm Santa Claus, I guess I could be Andy Griffin, you know. But the person who I'm gonna bring up here next, you know, he's well-spoken and he knows mental health like he knows his name, back his name. But Lieutenant Craig Parker, he's a very great asset to the police department, and without him, we couldn't make this city a safer place. So Lieutenant Parker can come up.
So good evening. Unlike some of our previous speakers, I am not from New York or California. Yet we do have something in common. I kind of shocked my parents not too long back. I told them I was going to speak at a conference in Southern California, and they said, where? Thank y'all so much for having me. It's my absolute honor to be here with you tonight. Thank you, Chief, for the kind words. We see what's going on in our world around us. I don't believe there's anyone in this room that has blinders on that cannot see what is happening. We have systems that are failing left and right. We have an educational system that is, as you put it, it's shaky ground. They're trying to figure out their way. My wife's a school teacher. I understand intimately the issues that are going on there. We have a mental health system that is failing right now as we speak. Now, I promised my mama that since I was talking in a church, I was not going to cuss tonight. And I'm going to hold true to that promise. But there's a saying that stuff rolls downhill, right? Unfortunately for our position, we're at the bottom of the hill, okay? When systems start to fail, the problems that they create, they land in one place ultimately, and that place is the street just outside of this church. We're the ones in charge of the street. We're the ones that have to deal with whatever issues show up out there that somebody's going to call 911 for. For far too long, people have found that 911 is the answer to every one of their problems. I have had to respond to disputes over spaghetti being thrown in the wrong trash can. I don't know how to solve that. If anybody has ideas, I'm open to suggestions. When I joined the police force, my dad had been a cop for over 28 years. Retired here from TPD in 2001. He'd started in '73. My dad was some great combination between John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. All right? I grew up learning how to be a cop. That is absolutely what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a real cop. I wanted to put criminals in jail. I wanted to drive fast. Right? Everybody likes the blue lights and the speed. You can't lie about it. But that's who I wanted to be. Now, I went off and was first one in my family to get a college education. Graduated from Auburn University, War Eagle. came back home to serve the good people of Tuscaloosa with my Auburn education, and I got hired on at TPD because I honestly believe this is where God called me to be. This is who I am. Being a police officer isn't a job. If you sign up thinking you're just going to get paid and you're going to get a paycheck, you're in the wrong line of business. This is far too serious of a career to just assume it's a job. This is who I am. So as we took this on, we started seeing the issues that our officers, that the public was running into by these systems that are falling apart. We have to do something. We can't just be people that sit on our hands and go, thoughts and prayers, I hope things get better. Words are great. Words are wonderful. Prayers work. Without action, nothing goes forward. So we started taking action. I'm very proud of where we've gotten to today, thanks to Kamisha's boss, Judge Rob Robertson, for advancing this well beyond where I thought it would be in Tuscaloosa County. We have a mental health officer program in the county. TPD, I'm one of 6 mental health officers assigned to TPD. We've got 24/7 coverage across the city of Tuscaloosa for mental health officers. If someone presents in crisis, showing signs and symptoms of a mental illness, and they are a danger to self or others, we can affect that detention and get them to emergency services. They will be held there until a psychiatrist can evaluate them and determine the best course of action from there. We also have crisis intervention team officers who are assigned to our patrol division 24/7. Roughly 30% of our patrol division is certified as crisis intervention team. 24/7 in the city of Tuscaloosa, you have a crisis intervention team officer on duty. Guarantee it. These are folks specially trained to de-escalate that person in crisis, hopefully to prevent a hospitalization, and in turn refer them to outpatient resources. You try to provide the lowest level of care needed for that situation. Now we've got the crisis center to help us out. We're making strides. Recently, when we started this behavioral intervention team, I took over our school resource officers as part of our command. Now our schools are getting the training in this. I have a meeting tomorrow to try to develop a training program for our teachers and our administrators in our schools to where they're better equipped to deal with mental health crisis. I've always kind of liked the saying, and it's something my dad passed on to me, if you have the ability, you have the responsibility. If you can do it, do it. We're in a good position. We're in a much better position than a lot of our rural neighbors. I'm from Pickens County. I know what rural living is about. I know what the lack of resources are. We export our training for free. Pickens County, Fayette County, Bibb County. You call us, we're there for a week. We will train your officers. We want our neighbors to call us. We want to spread what we have because we know it helps. And if we help them, it alleviates concerns for us. Because in Tuscaloosa, whether you believe it or not, if the surrounding area's got problems, it's coming to Tuscaloosa. Because we are absolutely the hub of West Alabama. And our problems affect our rural counties. You've got to address the whole issue at hand. Finally, last thing I'll speak on is our development of a threat assessment team. Some of you may not be aware of kind of what that entails, but please raise your hand if you watch Criminal Minds. All right, so all the cool people on there I've met. All right, that's the behavioral analysis unit at Quantico, Virginia, that are employed by the FBI, correct? Looks all cool. The offices are not near as nice once you get up there, but what they have is Behavioral Analysis Unit 1, which works at the prevention of mass targeted violence. So your school shootings, your workplace violence, things along those lines. We see these in the news every day. We were the first agency in the state of Alabama to start our own threat assessment team. Now, a school may have one or a workplace may have one or something like that, but the problem is none of them talk to each other. So we started a multi-agency, multidisciplinary threat assessment team to help prevent these acts of violence. For far too long, We've looked at policing, and by nature, we are a reactive profession. A crime has to occur for us to act. Without a crime, there's nothing we can do. But is there? Yeah, there's a lot we can do. Now we're being proactive. Now we're trying to prevent crime. We're trying to prevent a crisis. We're trying to prevent some mass attack that shows up on the news. Mass casualties aren't fun for anyone. It's a nationwide trauma just watching this stuff come across your screen. So once we started this Central Alabama Threat Team, I've got social workers at the table. I've got mental health professionals at the table. I've got school administrators. I've got attorneys. I've got any viewpoints that I can drag into a room and sit down with us to give their viewpoint on this, because I'm always going to look at things like a cop. That's my mindset. I'm going to go straight at a problem in a straight line, and I'm headed to a solution. There's other ways of looking at problems, and we have to be humble enough to know that there's other professionals that can help us, and that's what we're striving to do at TPD right now. So, Kamisha, thank you so much for keeping me on time. I've got roughly 40 seconds, I believe it is. That phone's so big I can read it from up here, so thank you. If y'all haven't seen her tablet that folds out, take a look at it. Thank you again so much for having us. I think on behalf of TPD, we're very honored to be here to speak tonight, so thank you very much again.
He wasn't supposed to tell my secret. So I'm going to ask those that have already spoken on the program if you would come up to the stage before I introduce our last person for question and answer. Ben, you can come too with Dr. Dorsey. Okay, yes. Our deputy chief is very busy. So everybody say a prayer for him tonight. Okay. So last but certainly not least, this person has been working in community behavioral health services for over 26 years, serving in varying roles. She has a master's degree in psychology and has been with Indian Rivers Behavioral Health for 24 plus years. She's been a part of the Indian Rivers leadership team for most of those 24 years. And from 2014 through 2022, she served as the clinical director of Indian Rivers, and she assumed the role of CEO in June of 2022. The most impressive thing that I can say about Karen Jones is that she's unassuming, but she is a lethal weapon when it comes to advocating for mental health. Will you please welcome Karen Jones?
I don't know why in the world I would have to come back behind. See, these short people don't give any credit. Why I have to come behind these folks, that's absolutely not fair at all. I'm going to try to be quick because I know it's getting late today and you all are tired. One thing I love to do is talk. I'm in a talking profession, so it's a prerequisite. So I want to tell you a little bit first about Indian Rivers. I'm just going to run down the Reader's Digest version. So Indian Rivers has actually been around for 55 years here in West Alabama, serving Tuscaloosa, Bibb, and Pickens counties. Now, be honest and raise your hand if you've never heard of Indian Rivers Behavioral Health. Never heard of it before. Don't know what it is. Okay. Well, we're doing better than I thought, because I thought at least 2/3 of you raise your hands. Never heard of you. Thank you for that introduction, Kamisha. And I will say, I've been with Indian Rivers for over 24 years, but I've been in the driver's seat for about a year and a half. Somebody made a mistake because they let me drive the bus. And so I want to reiterate some of the things that Lieutenant Parker was saying, in that it has been a broken system for a long time, and part of that has been that we've been doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome for 50 years, with the same funding amounts for the past 50 years. Now, I will say something about Indian Rivers that you might not know as well, is that we are not a state agency. We are not state employees. We're a private/public company, and we are contracted with the Department of Mental Health, so we receive some funding from them to provide services. But we're not a state agency. We're a nonprofit. And we work very hard and pinch a lot of pennies to try to do everything that we can to do what we do. But Craig is also correct in that times are changing, and they have been changing, and the mental health system has not been keeping up. So let me run down a little bit about what we do in case you don't know. So we're considered a comprehensive mental health center. So we have 4 divisions, essentially. We have children's division, we have adults with substance use disorder division, adults with mental illness division, and adults with developmental disabilities. We have everything from traditional outpatient type services like you would imagine seeing an individual therapist, seeing a psychiatrist or nurse practitioner. We have case managers that do all kind of linkage and referrals and support and training and education. We have intensive in-home teams, several intensive in-home teams. We have lots of residential type programming between group homes or supervised apartment living. We have 2 homeless programs. One is a true homeless, one is a homeless/housing program. I'll get into the weeds of that. We serve about 6,000 people per year on average, and that's just individuals that we serve throughout the year. 50% of those live in the city limits of Tuscaloosa. We also have programs, a crisis residential unit. We have therapists that are embedded in the Tuscaloosa City Schools and the Tuscaloosa County Schools, and the Pickens County Schools also. That's new. We just added that. We have a therapist embedded at the Tuscaloosa County Jail, at DCH Hospital for the inpatient unit that's called North Harbor, as well as the emergency room, and we have just actually expanded that to add another full-time therapist to the Stepping Up model that's embedded at the jail and at the hospital. One focuses on mental illness, the other focuses on substance use disorders. We just expanded our children's division and are expanding it more. We've expanded and added more schools to the system. We just partnered with the Tuscaloosa City Schools to add a new program at the New Heights program that's going to focus not only on traditional type services but also after-school programming that enhances a lot of the different things we do with the members of the community, including parents, siblings, other adults that live in the community that might need services as well. In October of last year, we opened up Hope Point Crisis Center. It's right on the corner down here at Greensboro. It's the big green roof. You've seen construction going on there because we're actually already expanding it. The plan was to open as quickly as we could, to start serving as quickly as we could with the plans of expansion. And that building, the second building on that campus, is set to open in December of this year, which will more than double the number of beds that we have there. So that's the Reader's Digest version. For me to truly go into some detail about what we do in our services, it takes 45 minutes to an hour, depends on how much caffeine I've had. So if you really want to know more, we have a resource table set up outside as well. It includes our information that has our website. And like I said, if there's one thing I love to talk about, it's what we do. It's about Indian Rivers. It's what I have done my entire adult life. And actually I have a personal story too, in that when I was 12 years old, my parents adopted siblings through the Tuscaloosa DHR. They were not known to us, they were not family related, but they were duly diagnosed, both of them. But we didn't know it at the time. So I grew up from the age of 12 having a brother and sister that we came to find out were duly diagnosed with mental illness and developmental disabilities. They both live in group homes now down in Montgomery. They have been involved repeatedly over their adult lives with law enforcement, with hospitalizations, with being incarcerated, with being committed to Bryce Hospital, to living at Partlow. At the age of 16, my parents handed me the keys and said, take them to their appointments at Indian Rivers. So I became to know Indian Rivers as part of my family at age 16, bringing my brother and sister to their appointments. And it was amazing how those people loved on their clients and their clients' families. And that's when I fell in love with community mental health, and that's all I ever wanted to do from that point on. So it's very personal to me. I also want to reiterate something that you said, and I just that quickly forgot your name. Ben. You said something about relationships. It is several times a week probably that I have a conversation with a family member or someone in the community that wants help and how to talk to someone about their mental health issues, or that they're suicidal, but they're scared to talk to them. The thing about developing a relationship with our clients is what you find out is they're just like you. It's just another human being going through some stuff. Now, it may be secondary to something chemical going on with a particular diagnosis that's affecting the brain, or it may be, something going on with the brain that's causing the substance use, but they're still just a human being. And I've always felt like God put me on a path. And sometimes, I will admit, over the years, I've argued with him. Are you sure this is what you want me to do? Because it's not easy. There's nothing that our providers do that's easy. It is heart-wrenching. It is sadness. It is watching human tragedies happen every single day, and you are compelled to fix it, to help. What we do is mission work. Matthew 25. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. It's not about the fame and the glory, although we do have some famous people here, apparently, from out of state, and kind of one from Auburn. Doesn't really count. Yeah, not from Auburn, but you got yourself in that category. But what I love about situations like this and why I've been almost shaking, and I don't get nervous because I've seen it, done it. What I'm nervous about is the excitement of seeing this many people interested in being a part of the change and interested in being a part of the village. What's that saying? Y'all say it.
Takes a village.
Takes a village. Well, we have been on a mission for the past year and a half to renovate Indian Rivers and how we serve our community from the inside out. That takes time to do those things, so I've been wearing our folks out, though, because as soon as they gave me the keys to the bus, I was like, all right, let's go, put it in fifth gear. Let's open a crisis center. Let's buy another building over on Skyland Boulevard and open another outpatient office and expand all of our services. Let's clean up this. Let's fix that. Let's renovate this. Let's add this number of staff. Let's add this program. And their heads are spinning. And I'm like, but it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do so much good things. So one of the things we did is develop the 4 tenets. We have a mission statement. We have a vision statement. But sometimes those kind of things just become words on a piece of paper, right? For this grant, you have to have a mission statement. You've got to have your vision statement. What are they? Well, I'm checking a box. It's what are we living every day? So I wanted something new and fresh for our entire agency, so I developed the 4 tenets. One is quality. Quality place to work. And quality services for the people we serve. Number 2 is integrity. Always do the right thing. Always do the right thing. Accountability is the 3rd, and that's holding each other accountable, ourselves accountable to provide great services and provide the treatment and the services and the support that the people we serve, it's what they deserve. The facilities that they deserve. The greeting at the door that they deserve. The treatment plans and services and supports that they deserve. And then the last is reputation, because all those first 3 will improve our reputation as being a resource for the communities we serve. And that's what it's all about, is being there for the people that we serve. Pardon? 2 minutes. All right. See, I couldn't see your phone. That's not fair. I got 2 minutes. So we're doing a question and answer, right? So I'm going to wait for the question and answer because I can just go on. She'll have to come get the hook. Do y'all remember that show? Or the gong? So I do want to mention a person that I see so I recognize a lot of faces, and some of them, I was going to say that y'all have been such a part of my journey to be a better person and to do even more to advocate for the people we serve. I see Audrey Ellis. Give her a round of applause. I see John Stewart with NAMI. I see Miss April Lane. You didn't think I'd see you, but I see you. I haven't seen you in years. And April was one of the first people that I met when I was coming to Indian Rivers to bring people to appointments and when I first started there. And a mentor you were. So I'm blessed to be able to get to see you tonight. And I have the wrong glasses on, so I can't see the rest of you. But if there's anybody I missed, I apologize, and I love you. All right, I'm going to start there, and I'll answer questions, though.
So I'm going to bring this back so that I'll be a little bit out of the way and you all can ask questions. If you have a question, there were supposed to be microphones out. Okay, all right. So our speakers, if you could kind of, when you answer, if you can kind of project a little bit. While she's preparing to do that, we want to give our speakers some special gifts. We are so excited that they are here, and we just want them to know how appreciative we are for them taking the time out of their busy schedules to come and talk to us about mental health.
I wanted to say thank you, especially. These people are my friends. I refer people to them all the time. 391-3131. It's embedded in my brain. These folks are resources for the community. If they can't do it, they know somebody that can do it. Craig Parker knows I have gotten calls from a woman in a car phone. I was driving through Greene County one time, and I got a call from a woman who was a retired cop in Houston, and her son was in the Pickens County Jail. Craig Parker found somebody to help that young man because he was getting no mental health services. He was getting incarceration. And so those are the kind of calls I get every day, and these are the people that the calls go to. I also wanted to say one thing, 988. I haven't heard it mentioned. 988 is mental health crisis line. It can be a veteran line. It can be a suicide line, but it's more vital than 911 in many ways. But you can call it in Alabama, you can call it around the country, but when you're in a mental health crisis, call 988, and you will end up ultimately with one of these fine people. You'll end up with a Dr. Dorsey. You'll end up with a Kamisha. You'll end up with some of these fine folks. So I haven't really asked a question other than emulate Karen and Craig Parker by talking too much. But thank you all for what you do every day.
Kamisha, I think it'd be helpful for y'all to explain how many beds are in Bryce Hospital, how many are available, how many beds are in North Harbor, and how many folks are actually in the jail that should be where they are.
So I absolutely keep those numbers at the top of my head at all times. You have one state hospital in this state. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to use my cop voice. I appreciate it, though. 268 beds. But wait a second, because it's not. They actually lease out about 30-something beds to Taylor Hardin for their female population. So really you're looking at close to 240 beds for an entire state. North Harbor, 54 beds, stays full. Your wait time to get from North Harbor to Bryce, on average for a male is about 6 months, for a female about 9 months. They just recently sent a female over there, I think a couple of months ago, that had been waiting over 2 years to get to Bryce. That's it. Jail. Jail, you're looking at a population in our jail currently that averages between 30 to 40% of our jail population is on psychotropic medication. That's your largest provider of mental health services in the state of Alabama are your county jails and your state prisons. That's just the truth of the matter. Advocate, advocate, advocate. We can, and Robert, you know me, you've seen me in court, you've seen me speak at different places, and I will never turn down an opportunity to speak on this topic. And that's great. Talking to local groups is wonderful. If these local groups don't take this down to Montgomery or don't hold their representatives accountable when they say one thing when they're politicking and do something else when they get down to the state capitol, nothing's going to change. They slashed the budget of ADMH by $38 million in 2012. We're barely back to that level now, and there's dispute on whether we actually are. What are we doing? Everybody pays lip service to it. But again, words are words.
So while she's walking back there, this is attorney Robert Morgan, and he is a guardian ad litem for our commitment hearings. Wonderful, wonderful head on his shoulders. He has a lot of information, and I thank you for being here. And also, I wanted to point out Maggie Blackwell. She is the social worker for the Tuscaloosa Public Defender's Office. Yes, she's here. Yes. And we have a question in the back.
But it's not really a question. I retired from the Department of Mental Health 2 years ago, but there is one other resource. A lot of times we forget the geriatric population. So there is a state hospital, the Mary Stark Harper Center, and it has about 100 beds also. So just want to make sure that everyone knows about it also. But it's a similar type thing as like Bryce and with Taylor Hardin, difficulties of getting in, but serves a real important niche in our population. So.
I hope it's okay if I tag on to what Philip was saying. But to get back to Robert's question of what can we do, our churches that are sponsoring this tonight also sponsor the Outside the Walls ministry. And that is a 3-part program. The first is a dinner on May the 16th at the C.A. Fred campus of Shelton State. The second is a job fair, and the third is a driver's restoration clinic. And there are so many ways for every single person here to help. Those are people who have just gotten out of prison, who are in reentry, and they are trying to become citizens that contribute to Tuscaloosa and not contribute to problems. And it is a great program, and we can all help with that. So if you want more information, ask your churches because they all know.
I have a question. Both of my sons had friends in high school who committed suicide, and I've got a family member who's a young woman who's suffering depression but can't seem to overcome the stigma of getting mental health treatment for her depression. Do you have any ideas of how to encourage people to overcome that stigma and reach out for help?
A similar situation. And one thing that you have to do is not be afraid to talk to the person. It's just another human being. You're not going to cause someone to have more issues by talking to them about it. You're not going to put suicidal thoughts in someone's head by talking to them about it, by asking the question. Are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? Have you been having thoughts about killing yourself? I just need to know so I kind of know how to help. The other thing is I believe in, and I know everybody tonight will get this more so than other groups I talk to, I believe in leaving the 99 and going after the one. I will come to someone's home, and we have other staff that will come to someone's home so that we're on their turf and be real, down-to-earth, one-to-one, talking about what we do, what is, you call it mental health, but really it's just life. Sometimes there's extra that goes along with that when you have a disorder of the brain, like with schizophrenia. But a lot of times it's just life, especially right now, since the pandemic. We've seen increases in everything under the category of behavioral health. So it really is, I have information for my contact information, and it's coming up with what do we need to do for that one person. We're working on the services that we need for our communities and the programs and the facilities. But there's always that one person that needs one particular, it's individualizing that approach. And a lot of people are still affected by stigma. But part of that is we do it as a society. It's not just that one person is, we do it as a society. So to piggyback that, one, give me a call. I got my cards, find me after, I'll give you my card, you can call me, send me an email. We will set up an individualized approach, having more information to reach out to that one person to make it feel safe and normal. And that's everything that we're doing to renovate our facilities. The way we developed Hope Point was to we call it a pseudo living room model, so that it feels comfortable. You don't feel like you're walking into a hospital inpatient unit. You don't feel like you're walking into a doctor's office. It feels a lot more comfortable and at home. Soothing colors, everything about it that when you walk in, including the way people greet you. So it really is, contact us and we'll come up, I'll ask a bunch of questions to find, okay, what's the best approach for that one person? And that's based on experience. This is what we do, and knowing, that this is based on a person's age, it's the kind of things that they do in their life, or they're worried about, or they care about in their lives, and individually designing the approach to bring that person to the help and support they need. I will piggyback that answer, and if it doesn't answer your question, I'll do it better when you call me. To piggyback that, though, to say about what can we do, we have to talk about this. We have to get together. Do you want to get, the federal government to pay attention? You want to get the state of Alabama to pay attention to do a better job funding the whole services? And I will say they're doing better now in the past 3 years than I've seen in my whole career in working in community mental health for over 26 years. So it's much better, but it's still not where it needs to be, because also as they're making all these improvements, the pandemic hit and put a big dent in that. So it's kind of like we need to put it in fifth year. All right, that's what I'm talking about, fifth year. It's pretty good. Try it out. So talk to our representatives, or getting an organized body like this and talk to the Tuscaloosa delegation that's going down to Montgomery. Get them in a room just like this. Have them sitting on this stage, talking to them about the problems, but get to know them. Feel comfortable with giving them a call, sending them an email. Because they're just people too, right? But they are the ones that can take our voice and our needs down to Montgomery and make change happen. I don't know if y'all remember, it's probably been about a year and a half, 2 years, when there's a big article that came out, and if I had false teeth, they would have fell out of my mouth when I read it. And it was about state of Alabama trying to figure out what to do with $8 billion in excess. Thank you. As soon as I got to work, I sent emails to people that I knew at the Department of Mental Health with a list of ideas. I know exactly what you can do with it. I got lots of ideas. Let me know if you want more ideas. Well, that's still on the table. That excess of funding is still on the table for our legislature to decide what to do about it. Guess where the funding for the crisis centers came from in the state of Alabama, which is huge. Love our legislators for it, because it was special funding. It didn't come out of the normal state budget for what community mental health centers across the state get every year, which, by the way, has pretty much been level funded for over 15 years. This is the first time we're starting to see, in the past 3 years, new funding or any kind of increases in funding has been in the past 2 years. And part of that was the legislative sessions that happened 3 years ago that were presented with the need for crisis centers, the model for crisis centers that's across the nation. And they said, okay, how much does each one need? And they decided on amount, and they did an RFP, or request for proposals, or grant applications. And so the mental health centers across the state had to apply to try to get the funding to build a crisis center. And so we came in the third round, finally got it. And the governor told me to get out of her yard. I was joking about that, I knew that. There's Secret Service here. I did not mean that. Just kidding. I'm not in her yard, not going there again. I mean, ever. But anyway, call me. I'll answer your question in better detail.
There's a church here, Canterbury, that has in their hall a little wooden case, and it has the postcards of all of our legislators in the state. And the address is right there, and you can just walk by, you come out of church, you can grab a postcard and then write your thoughts on the other side and mail it. And I think a lot of people would take the time to communicate if it was more convenient than going online looking for the address and everything, or you get involved in something else and you don't get back around. But if every church did that and had all those names out there, you just grab the postcard and then go home and write it, and they would be swamped. And I challenge every church that's here to do that.
You're my new best.
Yes, great idea. I believe we have time for one more question, if anyone has a question. Okay.
Good evening. My question, I'm not sure who on the panel, Ms. Carey, maybe you could help. We're seeing, as I think Lieutenant Parker was saying, like our juveniles, we're seeing a lot of juveniles in the educational system that are needing help. And what I've diagnosis of ADHD or ADD, but we know there's something deeper going on. So how do we get these individuals that need the treatment that they truly need? Because I'm thinking, what is it, the Ritalin is the main thing that's going, or, you know, whatever for ADHD or ADD is not helping. It might be on you again, Ms. Karen.
Yeah, so is this thing on this time so I don't have to yell? Okay. So yes, and actually you might help me with this too, and then ADHD, it's not the diagnosis or the symptoms that you're talking about. Now, those children that you're talking about may have ADHD, but that's not going to be all of what you're seeing probably and what you're talking about. So there's more going on probably, you're right. It is digging into and having good communication with the family, and I know how difficult that is, so just bear with me, but also with the treatment team that is facilitating care for that individual. We only know, or a therapist, or you know, our case managers, they only know what is provided to them as far as information. So whatever that child is telling us, or whatever the family members are telling us, we don't always get good communication from everybody else that's in that child's village. So it's that saying that you can't fix a problem you don't know about. And so if they're coming in and they don't like the inconvenience of an hour-long therapy session every other week, or they just want to do what we call med only, that they'll just come in and see the psychiatrist and get their medications every 3 months. They're not getting all those other services to address those other needs. So it's a process, and again, it's just like we have to talk about it. We have to get in a room. We have to get in small groups and look at those issues and strategize, how do we address that? So then my next question would be, are you in the Tuscaloosa City Schools or are you in the county schools? Okay, what school do you work at? Let's set up a time to come and meet, and it can be after school hours where we can come and meet and talk about all of those things and strategize some plans to do that very thing. There's not a rubber stamp answer to that. It's very individualized because there's so many things that can be done, but if we go back to the cookie cutter, it's not going to work. We have to look at the solutions that are very pertinent to that community or to that school or to that child, because you can throw traditional approaches at them all day long. We've been doing that, right? That's why it's so easy to throw that ADHD diagnosis and ADHD medication at a child who's having difficulty in the school. But if we take the time to work together as a team and come up with really what's going on, one of my favorite things that I did in my career was do an intensive in-home, and I've done it in several different counties. Sumter County, Greene County, Tuscaloosa, loved it. Now, I will say the rural counties, y'all are tougher to get in the door. I would spend a lot of time just developing a relationship before I would be trusted, and we'd talk about the real stuff. But that was where I got to see a better picture of what was really going on, and it would change your diagnosis, or it would add some to it. It's a huge difference in getting that good information that's not just that one source, it's just a one side of a 10-sided, problem. So I hope that answered it. But again, this is our community, it's our village. So we need to sit down. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here. That's why we have a table set up, is to start those conversations and start looking at those real solutions that really work specifically for our community and our needs. So call me too. As well, you call me too.
It was really interesting when I was in my residency. I saw the same thing you were seeing when I would do my child psychiatry rotation, and parent or child comes to me clearly having problems, and my choices were prescribe or not prescribe. And I'd listen to the child, and almost always, or a lot of the time, there was social turmoil, abuse, chaos, all kinds of other things going on in the child's life. And it just seemed like we weren't really looking at what was really, really going on. And one of my favorite expressions is that anything that can be healed with a human relationship should not be healed by anything else. And the problem is that we're seeing, I think with teachers are seeing it, doctors are seeing it, psychiatrists, is there's more turmoil, that kids are dealing with all kinds of things, social media, the relations, that just teachers can't teach because kids don't have the basic social skills. And that chaos is not good for attention, it's not good for mood, it's not good for impulse control. And we really got to rethink about, with these frayed sort of social structures and social fabric, what can we do to reestablish and reassert the importance of healthy relationships in kids' lives, I think is really where we need to start.
So as the one person up here without a PhD, family. It's so undervalued these days, and you can look around now. I'm sure most of us in here have great families. We came from great families. We have great families at home. Most of the folks outside this door, look at your divorce rates, how high they are. Look at all the fractured homes that there are, single parents raising 2, 3, 4 kids. That child is going to pay the cost for that fractured family. We've got to get back, groups like this, we've got to get folks back in church. We've got to get folks to value families again. I was blessed. Both my parents still together this day, still living on the same 10 acres of land that I grew up on. That's how I'm successful, because I was raised right. We've got to get back to raising our kids right. A lot of things that we think can be solved by medication, a lot of it comes from that upbringing. If you're brought up the right way, you may not need this extra care. So that's my layperson thoughts on it.
So I will be spearheading and along with Indian Rivers, we'll be spearheading a group of churches that will come together so that we can talk about the things that we can do in our local churches to help combat if we ever have to come across someone who has a mental illness that may come to our church. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've had 3 people in the past 3 months that have come, and 2 that have frequented the church that have mental illness. And it just so happened that, I guess because of my spirit, that I knew how to deal with them, but I'm sure that you all have come across people that have had mental illnesses come to church. So we want to come together. We are finished at this time. I'm going to ask that everyone would take your trash to the garbage, please, because all of you were raised right.
For the record, I wasn't.
I'll get yours, Karen. Okay, and so I want to just do a roll call before we leave, and then we'll have a closing prayer. So the churches that are present, if I call your name, if you have a representative, would you stand? This is Where is God When Life Happens, cohort of churches. Abundant Love Ministries. Amen. Brown Memorial Presbyterian. Yes. Canterbury Episcopal. First African Baptist Church. Yes. First Presbyterian. Yes. First United Methodist. Hunter Chapel AME Zion. The Merge Church. Mount Olive AME Zion. Mount Pilgrim Baptist, New Covenant Baptist, St. Mark's AME, St. Francis of Assisi Parish, yes, and Tabernacle AME Zion. We'll now have our closing prayer by Ms. Joyce Robinson. Yes, I'm sorry. Christ Episcopal, I did call, I just didn't say the whole name. Christ Episcopal. Yes. Yes, and let's give them a hand for the hosting and everything that they did to make us feel welcome. Okay. Also, make sure that you fill out the survey before you leave, and you can leave it at the back table. And don't forget to stop by the tables so that you can get information and connect with the people that came to give you information about mental illness and other resources that we have. Please stop by the tables.
You know, you've been here for a while and you're ready to go home. So let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we want to give you thanks for your many blessings. Thank you for who you are and all that you have done. Thank you for your loving care over all of your creation. And Father, we want to give you thanks for this program, for all the people who worked so hard to bring this together, to make it both a success. And we thank you for those people who are here that work so diligently to help those who are mentally challenged. And Lord, may this effort that has been put forth be beneficial for all. And we just ask you, Lord, that it'll all be done for your glory and for your honor. As you've taught us to love one another, let us be instruments of your love and your peace. These things we thank you for, and we thank you for granting our request. In Jesus' name, amen.